it describes that this company has been very successful because of the way it performs the aggregate planning. Okay, this company performs very systematic aggregate planning for all its manufacturing plants throughout the world. Do you know what is Frito-Lay? Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay is an American-based company that makes potato chips and various types of snack food. So if you like to eat snack food, you should know Frito-Lay. So this company actually sells more than 3,000 brands. 15 of the brands sells more than $100 million annually, and 7 of the brands sell over $1 billion every year. So imagine, you can make so much money by just selling potato chips. And in this company, unique processes and very specialized design equipments are used to make the potato chips. Okay, and the demand profile, customer demands for this customer are estimated based on historical sales, based on proper forecast techniques, based on promotion, based on local demand data. And based on the demand data, they try to match it with the capacity. So it means based on forecasting, based on demand requirements, they do capacity planning. And after capacity planning, what the company do is aggregate production planning. So the aggregate production planning is done every 3 months. It's done quarterly every 3 months. And it is done for all the 36 manufacturing plants of the company throughout the world, which are located in 17 different regions. And following the aggregate plan, the company then developed a 4-week plan, which is a short-term scheduling plan for all their production line. Okay, so if you're interested to know more about this case, you can read it from the textbook. It explains how this company has been so successful because of all the proper planning, especially the aggregate production planning that the company has performed. So let me explain this again. I think you have seen this before. Okay, I want to explain again the planning process. The planning process actually can be categorized based on time horizon. Okay, so based on time horizon, you can have the long-term planning, you can have the mid-term or intermediate-term planning, you can also have the short-term planning. Long-term planning is planning which is normally over a year. More than 1 year, long-term planning. Normally it's done by top executive or top management of the company. So long-term planning normally involve planning research and development issues. Okay, for example, setting the research directions. Okay, for the next few years to come, or planning for new product development. Okay, so the company have to decide whether to launch new products or not over the long term. Planning for capital investment, planning for facility location or expansion. Right? So all these are long-term planning. Long-term planning. Mid-term planning is normally between 3 to 18 months, and it's usually done by operation managers together with sales and operations planning people or team. And take note, aggregate production planning is a type of mid-term planning. Okay, I repeat, aggregate planning is a type of intermediate or mid-term planning, normally between 3 to 18 months. So if you look at Frito-Lay just now, the case company perform aggregate planning every 3 months, every quarterly. So in aggregate production planning, what we have to do is we normally have to do this. We have to plan our employment levels. How many employees to hire, how many employees to fire. Either you hire or you fire, right? At the same time, you have to set our inventory level and also setting our subcontracting level. I will explain more on this later, setting employment level, inventory level, and subcontracting levels. And the third type of planning is short-term planning. Short-term planning is normally less than 3 months. And normally it's performed by operation managers, supervisors, foremen, line leaders, and so forth. Short-term planning normally deals with scheduling. Simple as that. For example, coming up with a weekly production schedule or coming up with a monthly production schedule. So normally it deals with scheduling. For example, job assignment. Job assignment is a type of scheduling because we have to assign which you have to decide which job to assign to which machine or to which worker. So it's a type of scheduling. Okay, and in fact, job scheduling itself also is important because we have to determine when to start the production and what is the production quantity. Okay, when to start the production and how much to produce. And also sometimes it involves dispatching. Dispatching means determining which product to be dispatched first to the production process. Okay, in other words, setting the production sequence if you are making multiple products. Right? So next slide. Now, this slide shows where aggregate production planning will fit into the overall production planning process. Now, in every company, normally it starts with these two things. You start with this or this. Okay, so you can start with a marketplace where a customer required certain product. Okay, customer wants certain product. Or you can start with research and development. Okay, for example, the company have developed a new product and the company wants to push the product into the market. Right, so once we have either a demand from the marketplace or if the company want to push the product into the market, then they will have to do this. Okay, they will have to plan for their product. They will have to decide whether to launch the product or not. And once they have decided to launch the product, then they will have to do forecasting. Okay, they will have to forecast customer demand. Is there any customer demand? If yes, what is the pattern of the customer demand? And then at the same time, they also have to do process planning and capacity planning. So these two things I have already covered in the previous chapters, forecasting and capacity planning. Now, following capacity planning, what company will do is they will do aggregate production planning. To do aggregate production planning, they need information from capacity planning as well as information from forecasting. So these are the input. The information from forecasting and capacity planning will be input into aggregate production planning. And as I said just now, in aggregate production planning, what we have to do is we have to plan and set our workforce level. We have to plan and set our inventory level. We also have to set and plan our subcontracting level. Remember this, workforce level, inventory level, and subcontracting level. And once the aggregate production planning is done, a company will then do what they call master production scheduling, as well as material requirement planning. And following this master production scheduling, they will do this detailed work scheduling. This is like what I said just now, like short-term scheduling, coming out with a daily production schedule or monthly production schedule. Okay, so I hope you are clear where aggregate production planning fits into the overall picture. Okay, so if you look at this diagram again, this part is long-term planning. Planning whether to launch a product or not. Okay, planning to do research and development. This is long-term planning. Okay, when we reach here, this is mid-term planning or intermediate term planning. And when we reach here, it becomes short-term planning. Okay, so what is the objective of aggregate production planning? Okay, it says is to meet forecast demand while minimizing costs over the planning period. To me, this is a very general objective. Okay, in fact, all kinds of planning, even capacity planning or master production scheduling planning, okay, the objective is the same, is to meet forecast demand so that we can minimize cost. Aggregate planning, let me explain more. Aggregate planning. Now, the word aggregate means what? Okay, anyone can tell me the word aggregate? What is the meaning of aggregate? Okay, I'm waiting for your answer. Aggregate, cumulative. Okay, so aggregate means cumulative. Means you combine something, combine many things into something. or yes, total or average. So in aggregate planning, what we are doing is we are trying to come up with a combined planning, okay, or we are trying to come up with an overall planning for multiple products that we are considering. Okay, so aggregate planning is meant to be general, not specific. It's meant to be general. Okay, it's a combined planning for multiple products, okay, that we are considering. So for example, let's say a company is making these 6 products. Okay, these 6 products are different grass cutters, if I'm not wrong. Okay, different grass cutters. So the company perform aggregate planning for these 6 products. It is done every quarterly, so every 3 months they do it once. And the output of the aggregate production planning is the planned production quantities, okay, for all the 6 products. So for example, in January, the planned aggregate production quantities is 150,000 units. Okay, so this is an aggregate amount. This is a cumulative amount or an average amount or an overall amount for all the 6 products. Okay, so it doesn't tell what is the exact quantity for each of the products. So that is the outcome of aggregate production planning. It only tells you the aggregate quantity. So same with February, it says that the aggregate quantity that the company should produce is 120,000, which is for all the 6 products. Right? So aggregate production planning tries to combine appropriate resources or multiple products, okay, into general terms. So it's meant to be general, not specific. It's part of a larger production planning system. So if you understand aggregate production planning, you will know that it is actually part of what we call enterprise resource planning system, okay, or ERP system. ERP system is enterprise resource planning system. So aggregate planning is part of ERP system. And the aggregate plan that we have developed can actually be disaggregated. Okay, so this is called disaggregation. So disaggregation actually break down the plan into more details. And this aggregating the aggregate plan will result in what we call master production schedule. All right, so if you look at this diagram again, we have the aggregate production planning. If we break down the aggregate production planning into greater details, into more details, we do disaggregation, then it will result in master production scheduling. You will learn master production scheduling in the coming weeks. Right. So in aggregate production planning, there are certain options or strategies that you have to take or that you have to plan. So these are some of the strategies. So the first strategy is the company should always ask, should inventories be used to absorb changes in demand? Now, all companies will keep certain inventories in their warehouse to a certain extent. Okay, some are keeping more inventory, some are keeping less inventory. So for example, if demand changes, let's say demand increases, so should the company use the inventories to actually cope with the increase in demand? So that is the question. Should inventories be used to absorb demand changes? Okay, number 4, should subcontractors be used, okay, to absorb changes in the customer demand? You know what are subcontractors, right? Subcontractors are another company, okay, that is producing the product on behalf of the company. Okay, let's say your company is making a product, your company doesn't have enough capacity, so your company subcontract the job to another company. Okay, so that company is a subcontractor. It actually subcontract your job, produce the product on behalf of your company. Okay, subcontractors, it's like you guys are doing assignments. Sometimes you don't have time to do assignment, so you subcontract your assignment to your friend, ask your friend to do it for you. That's the meaning. Okay, subcontracting. So in production also, we have this concept. Okay, companies can always subcontract their jobs to other companies. Okay, if demand changes or if they want to cope with the changes in demand. And number 5 is should prices or other factors be changed to influence demand? Okay, so let me go into more details. of these strategies. These are general. So now I'm going into more details. Okay, from the capacity perspective, from the capacity point of view, these are the strategies, these are the options that company can take. First, changing inventory levels. Okay, so for example, a company can increase inventory in low demand periods, okay, in order to meet high demands in the future. Understand this, company can increase inventory, means it can keep more inventory during low demand periods, so that during high demand periods, the company can meet the high demand. Okay, it's just like oil and gas. So before the war, before the Ukraine and Russian war, the demand for oil and gas is very low, right? But some countries are already stockpiling, some countries are already storing a lot of oil and gas. Okay, and now that the demand is very high, so these companies have no problem. Okay, these companies, these countries have no problem meeting the high demand. Okay, because they have already stockpiled a lot of oil and gas. Okay, they already have a lot of oil and gas reserve. So they have no problem. So this is one strategy that can be taken to cope with changes in demand. Okay, now, but of course, if you keep too many inventory in your warehouse, then it will increase the cost. Okay, it will increase costs associated with storage costs, insurance costs, handling costs, obsolescence costs, as well as capital investment costs. Right? So keeping things in warehouse incur costs. For example, storage costs. If you want to keep something in warehouse, you need a space. Right? Some company rent a space to keep their inventory, so they have to pay rental fee. Okay, of course, most companies have a warehouse to keep their inventory, right? So to have that warehouse, they have to build the warehouse. So construction cost is involved. Right? Same with insurance. Keep something in the warehouse, you need to buy insurance. The inventory in the warehouse have to be protected from fire, from damage. So normally all warehouses, all companies will insure their warehouse in terms of buying fire insurance and so forth. Also involve handling costs. Right? We need to hire workers to load or put the inventory into the storage rack. Okay, and we also need the workers to actually unload the inventory from the storage rack. So handling costs involved because we have to pay the workers, right? We have to employ workers. Obsolescence costs are costs that you have to incur if the product become obsolete. Sometimes a company store the product for too long a period, okay, for very long period in the warehouse, and the product become obsolete. Okay, obsolete means become out of date. So when the product become out of date, then the company have to bear the obsolescence cost. Okay, and as well of capital investment cost. Okay, and if the company, in contrast, if the company doesn't store enough inventory, then they may have shortages. Okay, so if shortages happen, then it may means lost sales. Right? So planning this is very important. Planning this strategy is very important. You have to know what is the right amount of inventory to keep in the warehouse. If you keep too much, it will incur costs. If you keep too little, then you will have shortages. Now, another options that companies can take is to change their workforce size. Okay, change their workforce size by either hiring more employees or firing more employees. Okay, firing means lay off the employees. Now, actually, this is a strategy that company can take to match their production rate to demand. So, for example, demand increases, you don't have enough capacity. What you can do is you can hire more workers. Okay, and when demand reduces, you can lay off the workers. But hiring and layoff involve a lot of costs. Both hiring and layoff involve a lot of costs. Okay, if you hire new employees, normally you have to train them. Okay, because they are new employees, so training costs will be involved. Same thing, if you fire employees, if you lay off the employees, you have to compensate the employees. So separation costs will be involved. And new workers that are hired normally have low productivity because they are new, they are not familiar with the company production processes, so they may have lower productivity. And if you simply fire workers, if you simply lay off workers, then it may affect the morale and productivity of the existing workers in the factory. Right? So this is one strategy that a company can take, but they have to be very careful. Third strategy a company can take is to change their production rates. Okay, how company can change production rates? They can either work overtime or they can make it as idle time. If demand increases and company doesn't have enough capacity, then they will ask worker to do overtime. Right? But if demand decreases, then it means the production rate can be reduced and workers will have more idle time. Now, the good thing about this strategy is it allows a constant workforce level. So it does not involve hiring new workers or firing workers. We will maintain a constant workforce level, but we just ask the employees to do overtime, or we give them more idle time. And this strategy sometimes is difficult to meet large increases in demand. Right? If there's small increases in demand, then no problem. We can ask the workers to do overtime. But there is always a limit of workers doing overtime. So if let's say there is a substantial increase in demand, then maybe this strategy will not work because there's a limit of how long a worker can perform overtime. Now the bad thing is overtime can be costly. Can be very costly. In Malaysia, if you ask workers to do overtime during weekdays, company normally have to pay 1.5 times higher their salary. Okay, 1.5 times higher their normal salary. If they ask the workers to do overtime during weekends, then the salary have to be 2 times higher. Okay, and if you ask the workers to do overtime during public holiday, then the salary will normally have to be 3 times higher. Okay, this is why I understand. And overtime sometimes can drive down productivity, because you ask the workers to do overtime, they are really very tired, very exhausted. So it may drive down productivity. And sometimes absorbing idle time can also be difficult. Okay, let's say there's no demand, so production rate goes down, so workers have nothing to do, they are idle. Okay, so what do you ask the workers to do? Normally company will ask them to take leave, or they may ask them to take unpaid leave, right? And workers normally do not prefer unpaid leave because everyone wants to receive their salary, right? So therefore it says this is why it's very difficult to absorb idle time. And fourth capacity option is to do subcontracting. I already explained what is subcontracting. So for example, if let's say Intel, let's say Intel, okay, Intel Corporation, Intel Corporation makes computer chips, right? So if let's say demand increases and Intel doesn't have enough capacity to produce the chips. So in this case, Intel may decide to subcontract the production of chips to another company. Okay, let's say TSMC. Okay, you know TSMC, TSMC is one of the largest chip manufacturer in the world. It's based in Taiwan. Okay, in fact, I remember last time Intel has outsourced the production of chips to TSMC before. Okay, means Intel have actually subcontracted the chip production to TSMC before. So it's normal. It's normal for manufacturing company to take this kind of strategy. Right, another example I can give is, let's say, Foxconn. You know Foxconn. Foxconn is a company also based in Taiwan. It's a very famous electronic products manufacturer. In Pulai, Malaysia, we have a plant. So if let's say Foxconn doesn't have enough capacity to make their products, then most likely Foxconn will subcontract it to which company? Okay, anyone can let me know your thoughts. Let's say Foxconn Okay, Foxconn doesn't have enough capacity to make their products. Which company do you think Foxconn will subcontract their production to? Okay, Foxconn, you can Google search Foxxconn. Nobody knows what is Foxconn? Company called Foxconn. Okay, you try to Google, okay, but Foxconn, Apple, uh, Foxconn makes semiconductor products for Apple. That's true, I think. Okay, makes semiconductors for Apple. So Apple is their customer. Okay, so my question is, if let's say Foxconn doesn't have enough capacity to make the chips or to make the semiconductor products or electronic products, okay, they may subcontract their jobs to, okay, maybe TSMC again, or a good example is they may subcontract their job to Flextronics, right? Flex or Flextronics. Flextronics is another global player in semiconductor manufacturing, okay, making all kinds of printed circuit board as well as electronic products. Okay, another major player in semiconductor manufacturing industry is Jabil as well as Celestica. Okay, Malaysia we have Jabil plant in Penang. We also have a Celestica plant in Senai and in Tapoy, Johor Bahru. Right, so I hope you understand the examples that I've given. And subcontracting is actually only a temporary measure to cope with demand changes. Okay, because we cannot always subcontract all our jobs to a subcontractor. Why? Because if we do that, then the company will lose all its trade secrets. It will lose all its confidential information to the subcontractor. And subcontractor most of the time are the competitors of the company, right? Okay. So subcontracting is only a temporary measure. Why? I really explain the reason. And sometimes it may also be very costly because the subcontractor normally will charge very high price. And it is also very difficult to assure the quality and timely delivery of the products because the subcontractors are not making the products for themselves. They are making it for their competitors, they are making it for other companies. So the company, the subcontractor will not be bothered too much about the quality or the timely delivery of the product, right? And next strategy, sometimes company can use part-time workers, and this is especially useful for filling unskilled or low-skilled positions. For example, Food Panda or Grabs. Okay, these are food delivery company. Let's say they do not have enough workers to deliver the food, then they can just hire part-time workers. Okay, because the part-time workers doesn't have to be skillful. They only need to know how to drive a motorcycle. Right? If you know how to drive a motorcycle, you can become a food panda delivery person. So it's useful. This method is useful for filling unskilled or low skilled positions. Okay, but let's say you are trying to uh, do something which involve a lot of skills. For example, operating a unique machines that involve engineer that is highly skillful. Then this option will not work. This option will not work. You cannot just employ part-time workers to operate the machine because the part-time workers do not have the skill to operate the unique or specialized machine. Right? So those options that I've discussed are from the capacity point of view, from the manufacturer point of view. Okay, but now let's look at it from the demand point of view. Okay, so these are the options or strategies that company can do from the demand point of view. Right. So first thing is we can always do something to influence the demand. Right. If demand changes, if demand is inadequate, for example, we can do something to influence the demand. For example, using advertisement or promotion to increase demand during low periods. Okay, so I think I've given this example before. Nowadays, you see the property market, the housing market is very bad. Okay, supply is more than demand. There are many houses being built, but there is no buyers. Okay, so what company do? They perform, they do advertisement, they do promotion. Okay, so advertisement promotion may help a little bit, but it may not necessarily solve the problem. Okay, because if people do not have money to buy the houses and properties, then they will never be able to buy, no matter how attractive is your advertisement or promotion. So it may not be sufficient. It may not be sufficient to balance demand and capacity. Okay, it's only a temporary measure to not to say to solve the problem, okay, to bolster the problem, to reduce the impact of the problem. Okay, and another option is company can also do back ordering. Company can back orders during high demand periods. So what is back order? Back order means required customers to wait for an order without the loss of goodwill or the order. So for example, a customer says, okay, I want to order this product and I want it to be delivered in April. But you said cannot. Okay, you tell the customers I can only deliver it in May. Okay, and the customer say no problem, I can wait until May. So that is back ordering. So back ordering is basically telling the customers the product is not available now, it is only available in the future. And the customer must agree. Okay, so if the customer agree, then the goodwill, the trust will not be lost. And this strategy is effective when there are only a few substitutes for the product or service. Right? If there are only a few substitutes for the product or service, then the customer have no choice, they have to wait. But if there are a lot of different substitutes or alternative for the product or service, then the customer will say, never mind, I will not wait, I will go to another company, I will buy it from another company. Right? So if the customer are not willing to wait, then it will often result in lost sales. Because the company will buy the product from another company. Third strategy, company can also develop what they call counter-seasonal product or service mixing. Okay, counter-seasonal product means what? Means product that goes against the current season. Counter-seasonal product. In Malaysia, there's a shop that only sells winter clothing. Right, I forgot the name. Is it called Winter Time? Forgot the name. I think it's Winter Time. There's a shop, there's a company in Malaysia called Winter Time. This shop only sells winter clothing. So it means that company will only have demand when people in Malaysia wants to go to vacation in a winter country. Okay, so only during that time that people will buy the winter clothes. Okay, aside from that, demand will be very low for the company. So to solve this kind of problem, the company can consider to develop counter-seasonal products. Okay, for example, instead of just selling winter clothing, the company should also sell summer clothing. Okay, just like Universal Traveller, there's another shop, right, in Malaysia called Universal Traveller. Of course, this shop specializes in selling winter clothing. Okay, but this Universal Traveller also sells other clothing, right? It also sells, I think, summer clothing, and it also sells other items like luggage bag, okay, and other items. Alright, so this is one example where companies develop counter-seasonal products. They don't focus on only one particular product for one particular season. Right, if you look at Uniqlo, Uniqlo is a Japan-based company. Right, this company sells counter-seasonal products. Okay, it sells winter clothing. At the same time, it sells summer clothing as well as all types of clothing. Right, so this is another strategy, counter seasonal product, and service mixing also, service mixing. It's also important. Okay, just like myself lah, I'm teaching, so I can mix my service. Instead of giving face-to-face class, we can give online classes. So that is service mixing. Right, so these are the summary of all the options that I've discussed just now. Okay, first option is changing inventory levels. I already explained. Uh, you take this strategy, then the advantages what? Uh, there will be no or very gradual changes in human resources. So it means it does not involve firing or hiring more employees. And if you only change the inventory levels, it will not affect the production rate. So these are the advantage of changing inventory levels. Disadvantage, I already explained, if you keep too much inventory, it will increase the inventory holding cost. But if you keep too little inventory, then shortages may incur or may occur. Second strategy, varying workforce size by hiring or lay off the workers, by hiring or firing the workers. Advantage of this method is you can avoid the cost of other alternative. Right? If you just hire and fire workers, you can avoid the cost of paying a subcontractor. Right? You can avoid the cost of storing too much inventory and so forth. And the disadvantage of this method is, as I said before, if you hire and fire employees, okay, cost will be involved, and the cost can be significant. Right? Okay, I think I'm not going to go through it again. I think I already explained already. You can read this. So basically, this table summarizes all the options that I've explained just now, together with the advantages and disadvantages. Right? So you have changing inventory levels, changing workforce size, changing production rates, either through overtime or giving idle time to the workers, doing subcontracting, and using part-time workers, influencing demand if demand is low by doing advertisement or promotion, okay, back ordering during high demand periods. Back ordering means we back order the demand, means we tell customers to wait and we will deliver the demand in the future, and doing or developing counter seasonal product or providing service mixing. Okay, okay. Now, in practice, a single strategy may not work best. Okay, a single strategy alone may not work. A mixed strategy may be a better way to achieve minimum cost. Right. So therefore, later you will see in aggregate production planning, most companies will adopt a mixed strategy approach. So there are many possible mixed strategies. For example, you can mix subcontracting strategy with changing inventory levels. You can do both, right? Or you can hire more employees at the same time. You do back ordering. So there are different ways of mixing the strategy. So this is what people will normally do in practice. And sometimes finding the optimal plan is not always possible. Okay, it's fine. If it's not possible, then we find the most satisfactory plan. Okay, so this statement is just to explain most of the time we will not be able to come up with the optimal plan, but we do our best to come up with the most satisfactory plan. Okay, this one, maybe I'll continue next week. I will continue with the strategy next week. There are two more, chase strategy and level strategy. Okay, what time now? Okay, 4:50. Okay, I think I can stop already. Okay, today's lecture I think is a bit more theoretical. It's just about explaining the concept of aggregate production planning and also the type of strategies or options that a company can take. Right, so any question that you would like to ask before I stop the class? Okay, if no, then Remember, test 1 is already confirmed on Tuesday, 26, right? 26, correct? 26 Tuesday at 2 p.m. Okay, so we can say goodbye and I will see you on Wednesday, 11 to 1. Later, 5 minutes from now, you can scan your attendance. Okay, goodbye. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, doctor. Doctor.